Okay, once you get signed in, if you want to go ahead and come up to the podium, just state your name and
Good evening. My name is Terry Webb. This is my wife, Roberta.
hello.
And as you might know, we opened a restaurant this weekend in the old Taco Brown building, Mom's Kitchen, excuse me. And what we're here tonight to do is to see about ask permission, whatever you want to call it, for a license to sell cereal malt beverage beer.
Okay, perfect. I've had the privilege of having a little bit of your guys' food. I will say that. It's been delicious.
We had a ball, we had swamp, but it was good.
Yes, and I think you are underneath our formal actions tonight on our agenda. So that will be coming up a little later on in the meeting, but thank you for introducing yourselves.
We also would like to approach you about putting in a sturdy built building out back to store our overstock, paper goods and canned goods and stuff. Is that something we can do today, or do we need to do that another time?
That's something probably discuss with Jeff back there.
We've talked to him a little bit about it, so.
Okay.
I didn't know if we needed to come before the commissioner.
Yeah, he'll lead you in the right direction on that. Yeah, thank you.
Welcome to town.
Thank you.
Okay. We will move on to presentations and proclamations. I believe we have an introduction happening this evening of a new officer. For Officer Reddick, Frank, if you want to come up and make an introduction.
So, this is Martin Reddick.
Microphone, please. Thank you.
Sorry. This is Martin Reddick. He is pretty much from the Chicago area. He started with us last Monday. And he will be going to the academy starting August 8th. And he will graduate in November. So this will probably be the last time you see him for a few months. So I just wanted to introduce him to y'all so y'all would know who he was when you saw him. So.
All right, well, it's nice to meet you. Thank you for deciding to come and join our community out here in western Kansas. So.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Okay, well, let's move on to consent agenda. We have A, 6/2022 commission meeting minutes, and then B, appropriation ordinances 2022-13, 2022-13A, and 2022-P13. Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding those? If not, I would entertain a motion to accept.
I move that we approve the consent agenda items A and B.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Redlin,
I'll second that motion.
a second by Commissioner Howard. Any other further discussion? Roll, please.
Myers,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Redlin,
Yes.
Showalter,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes. Okay, next we will move on to formal actions, starting with the acceptance of the 2021 audit report. I believe we have someone here to speak to it.
Yeah, the audit report right up here.
Yes.
Request the technical contents of the independent auditor's report. It's kind of changed around from the last time. It changed as far as the United States as a whole goes, AICPA. Have decided that the opinion should be first and then who we're auditing and that kind of thing second. So it's kind of reverse of what it used to be. So anyway, we do tell you that we have an adverse opinion in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles because you've opted out of those. And this is a matter of public record, so we have to tell everybody else that you've opted out of them. We also indicate that we have an unmodified opinion on a regulatory basis, which is a clean opinion on the financial statements. Then we go into what the adverse opinion means. Again, it's due to the fact that you didn't follow generally accepted accounting principles, and again, that's because it's a matter of public record. We have to kind of lay this out for everybody. Then we talk about the responsibilities of management and what our responsibilities are in performing the audit. And we have an opinion on supplemental information on the next page, which basically is a clean or unqualified opinion. And we also indicate that we present the information from the previous year back in the supplemental information, and that our opinion on it was a clean, unqualified opinion. So, good report on as opinions go. Then we can get into the numbers a little bit, page 4 and 5. This lists all of your funds, basically shows the unencumbered cash, cash receipts, expenditures, unencumbered cash, and then reconciles by adding back the payables to what your ending cash balance is. And if you turn to page 6 and 7, you get to see that we show what the cash is in money markets, investments, that type of thing, which reconciles back to what's in your funds. So overall, you went from an unencumbered cash of $11,005,000 to $11,260,000, so you're up about $250,000. And most of that is in the general fund. It went from $694 to $821. You had a slight decrease in your special purpose funds from $7,691,000 to $7,643,000. Bond interest stayed down about 5. Capital projects, you went from $32,000 to $187,000. Part of that being that the water system improvement money has come in, but nothing has been started yet. So that's the big reason for it changing as much as it did. The two that have brackets around it, the airport improvement and the street improvement project, both end up having a negative cash. You're in a reimbursement situation on those. So basically, when we get into footnotes, I'll show you that we say that could be a statutory violation, but because you're in a reimbursement situation and you have grant money coming, you're okay. So long-winded way of stating that you're okay. Business funds went from $2,422,000 to $2,455,000, so overall not that much of a change on them. And then you had your trust funds on the last page, which went from $119,000 down to $113,000. So not really big changes, and overall things went up, so that's a good sign. We get into the footnotes on page 8 and 9, and I'm not going to go over them too much. Basically, it's for someone who doesn't know as much about the city as you guys do, to let them know how you operate. Talks about what accounting method you use, etc. It does have some information in it, though, like on page 10. One of the things that we have to do from the statutory basis financial statement is to make sure that you're adequately secured in your bank accounts, either through FDIC coverage and or pledged securities, and you are. So, again, a good sign. We talk a little bit about the defined benefit pension plan on page 11. And I indicate this each year, but I just think you guys need to know what the liability is. And right now, your liability for the pension fund that's allocated to you by the state is $1,408,641, a huge number. None of that's ever going to come due at one time. It's not like they're going to ask you for that. It's a rolling number. It takes some years to figure out what the number is, because this is actually as of June 30th, 2021, not December 30th. And some of the information is actually from December of the year before, but they just roll forward and kind of estimate what it is as of December 31st for you guys. It's also based upon a lot of applications of present values, because what they do is they basically try to figure what the payments are going to be for someone who's been with you to the time they retire and the time they're going to die, and then try to allocate that back present value wise to this time frame. And the interesting thing to me is that I think if you look at last year's report, you're going to see that number up several $100,000 compared to what it is this year. So I'm not sure what they did to change things that much, because it wasn't like you paid all that out and dropped your liability. So I sometimes a little leery of what that number really tells you if you can't do that. But that comes out of the state. Long-term debt is on page 12. You went from $5,003,000 down to $4,009,000. You had $425,000 paid off. You just have the 2 bond issues, and it shows how much is due in each of the next 5 years, and then for 5-year increments after that to show you what the total is that's due. Let's see. I still have a footnote in there about COVID due to the fact that it's still lingering on in 2021. Hopefully one of these days I'll kind of get to take that one out. On page 14, we have compliance with Kansas statutes. That's where I indicate that you look like you have a budget violation due to the fact that those 2 funds are in negative cash, but because they're reimbursement funds, that's okay. You have the money to cover it, and that's what the state wants to know, is that you have the money to cover it. A little bit of a change in notes under subsequent events is just to let everybody know that Senate Bill 13 has kind of changed the parameters of things and when your processes can be changed to a different timeline. So that's just to let everybody else know that. Page 17, you get to see the budget to actual, and here what you want to see is over in the variance, over and under, is you want to see them either with a bracket around it or 0. If you've done that, then you don't have a budget violation, and that's the whole reason for the state having us put this particular statement in, is because they want to be able to look at a glance as to whether there's any budget violations or not, and you don't have any. After that, we get into the individual funds. General fund, let's see, I'll get down here to, I guess it's actually on page 19. Your total cash receipts up there at the top of the page, top third roughly, went from $3,021,000 to $3,198,000. Most of that increase occurring because of increase in the ad valorem or taxes as a whole, and also in the some of the intergovernmental stuff such as liquor and recreation, office rent, that type of thing was up this year, resulting in revenues being up. Expenditures on page 22 went from $2,976,000 to $3 million, so they're up slightly, but not really that much. And I think, I know I'm kind of flipping back and forth, but general government was up slightly, but police was down. Municipal court was just barely above what it was the year before. Animal control showed a slight increase. Transportation showed about a $9,000 increase. Fire department, about a about $38,000 increase in expenditures. And the ones that show increase, some of it's due to the contractual services that were performed, some of it's the increase in transfers within those ones that resulted in them going up. Street and alley is up some, about $20,000. Airports, roughly the same. Parks was up from $113,000 to $154,000, and that was due to personnel cost and some transfers. Museum up about 15. Cemeteries down about 2,000. Recreation about 1,000 up, and economic development was about 9,000 more than it was before. And then the Seaver Water Park was up about 12,000. So the ups and downs overall meant that your overall expenses went up about $94,000 compared to the year before. Then I'm going to kind of switch past all of the special revenue funds, unless you have a question about those, to your capital projects, which on page 38, just to show you again that you have several capital projects. The one for the grant improvement reserve still had a positive cash in it, even though it was down some, about $3,000. Your CID project pretty much was a wash there. Airport improvement Had quite a bit of money coming in, but again, had quite a bit going out, so that has that receivable basically at $29,000 at the end of the year. Water system improvements you hadn't done too much on, so it has the cash, but it hasn't shown any expenses yet. And then street improvement project was down also. But again, there's money coming in to cover that, $183,000. Then you get into the utility funds on page 43 and 44. Here we see the cash receipts up for on the electric fund are up from 6.3 to 6.5, so we got about 200,000 increase there. Production also saw an increase from 3.9 to 4.2. Transmissions saw an increase of from 1.1 to 1.3, and commercial and general actually saw a decrease. So overall, your expenditures went from 6 million, just a little over 6 million, to 6,491,000. And again, most of those increases are contractual services or transfers that are being made to other funds. Water utilities on the next page. Cash receipts on it are up just 20,000 overall from the year before, with the decreases in your production and your transmission being up about $5,000. So overall, your expenses went down in this fund from 1.1 million to 1.05 million. So decreases there. Sewer is on the next page. Cash receipts aren't quite as high as they were the year before this. They're about $5,000 down. Expenditures overall are sitting at about 43,000 more. So you have a loss in this fund compared to a profit the year before, but you still have fairly healthy cash, 122,000 sitting in that. And then solid waste, which is virtually all contractual services, wasn't much of an increase in the receipts from 506 to 508, but expenditures were down, so you had less of a loss this year, only about 2,000, a little less than 2,000 compared to about $9,600 a year before. So all of those are sitting in pretty good shape. And when you consider the reserves, which actually, page 49, 50, 51, which is actually money that's available to help out in those funds. Because if you looked at just water by itself, I would say that cash-wise, it's a little low. Okay, but when you start throwing the reserve in there, which is another 448,000. Did I say water? I meant electricity. If I didn't say that, electricity is a little low. But this, with the reserve in there, you're still sitting at about a little over $500,000. So overall, I think it looks good with the reserves when you consider them. If you didn't have those, I might stress that you need to start looking at maybe some rate increases, which nobody wants to talk about. That would probably be what you'd have to do there, but with those reserves sitting there, it's still in pretty good shape. So, any questions?
No, so overall, you said it's a good report, everything
Good report.
looked as
There
it
is a
should.
letter that usually that I don't know if you have yet, but basically this letter is basically saying that while we were doing the audit, there are some estimates that have to be made, like the budgets and the estimate on, like I said, on the pension plan, that type of thing. So it's just talking about that, but it's also talking about the fact that as we did the audit, we didn't have any difficulties or issues that we had to overcome. So it's a good report there too.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
I don't have any questions. No, sir.
No, I think it looks good.
Feels like a good audit report. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then we'd like to make a motion for the acceptance of the 2021 audit report.
So moved.
A motion by Commissioner Showalter,
I'll second.
with a second by Commissioner Redlin. Any other further discussion? Roll, please.
Howard,
Yes.
Redmond,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Showalter,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now let's move on to B, ordinance 1752 for city park hours. Kent, if you would, please.
This was presented last meeting as a discussion item, and the commission at that time directed staff to draft an ordinance regulating park hours and adding certain sections for the penalties for doing so. We had discussion regarding certain situations that are occurring in our parks in the overnight hours, and this is just a tool to help the law enforcement and also hopefully keep our parks in better shape as it goes along. It's not a complete response to what's happening, but at least it gives the opportunity to enforce just directly if someone's in the parks at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. There's really no reason for anybody to be in the parks at that time. So the hours that were included on the ordinance is from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. Those would be posted at the different city parks. There can be exceptions for special events. Just stand for questions, and if you have a question for police chief or the park superintendent, certainly provide those. I don't know if Danny or Frankie have anything additional to add.
Well, I just want to say that we have vandalism again over the weekend. So we're gonna have to do something. We're gonna have to lock the parks or get an ordinance or something, but the bathrooms are temporarily locked up at Chambers because they trashed both of them over the weekend, so I haven't had time to fix them back up yet, so. But,
They're probably going to be closed for this week,
Yeah.
so.
so they tore them up pretty good this time.
And this is, then you have to use funds out of your
Oh, yeah.
budget to take care of all of that.
It's not, it's all the parks, it's
Yeah.
different ones. They're not picking on one, they're picking on all of them pretty well.
You know, it's unfortunate that we have people in the community who have so little respect for
The bathrooms are there.
for our
to
parks and
benefit
stuff,
them.
that they think this is an okay thing to repeatedly do, and then to have to put us in a situation to where we're discussing whether or not we need to lock down the parks at night. You know, it's just sad, really.
Just curiosity, does like the cemetery, does it fall underneath a park, or like is it something different? Right, I just didn't know like if it like fell underneath like the terminology of park.
Meaning the hours.
Yeah, no, okay.
It has separate rules, so. No.
I was just curious because we had that last week, or the last time we met, we had that discussion with the cemetery board and stuff. I was just curious.
Any other further discussion or questions for Danny while he's up there?
Thanks, Danny, for everything that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions regarding the wording of the ordinance itself? Is everybody satisfied with the hours of 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. in the wording?
I don't have any problems with any of it.
And as far as penalty, that falls under whatever the criminal trespass is, it looks like.
Does this work for you, Frankie?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd make a motion that we pass ordinance 1752.
I'll second that motion.
A motion by Commissioner Showalter and a second by Commissioner Howard. Any other further discussion? You know, for me personally, I want to say that I don't necessarily like the idea of having to lock down our parks at night. You know, it's one of those things that's restrictive, that once you get something restrictive, it's always kind of difficult to get rid of that. But at the same time, we are having continuous issues with people coming into the parks and vandalizing them and mistreating them and causing damage. And, you know, it's not something that we can just allow to keep on happening, I don't think. I'm sad that this seems to be the solution that we have to go to try to stop that, but unfortunately, I think it is what we need to do. But on that, roll please.
Ready,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Meyer,
Yes.
Showalter,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to C, ordinance 1753, the solid waste contract fuel adjustment. Kent, if you would.
Members of the commission, we discussed this as well at the last meeting. That there is a adjustment or a cost within the contract with our solid waste provider that states there will be a fuel adjustment to charges for service when diesel fuel rises above $3.50 per gallon. For every 50-cent increase in the 6-month average cost of diesel fuel, both the residential and commercial service rates will be increased by a quarter. Following an increase, if it then drops below that, then it's taken off. So it is fluid. It isn't, you know, it matches the cost, but we will have an increased cost for the 6 months from July to December. And depending where diesel goes, which is anybody's guess, if you can tell me what it is, then I'll go ahead and purchase a futures contract on diesel fuel. You know, we didn't have any mechanism in our code in order to pass along that cost. And just like the auditor just said, we ended up with a very slight, as far as the overall solid waste fund. For the year, we were about $1,500 or $1,600 in the red for 2021. For 2022, there'll be a slight increase with this cost. And I think Mary was trying to confirm with me earlier today, I think we will have the average cost will
4.42, so it'll be 25 cents.
25 cents. And we'll see if there's any additional discussion from the provider, but there'll at least be a 25-cent charge. And what we put in is created an additional section that allows the fuel adjustment to be passed along. It won't be implemented until January. So these first 6 months, we'll just take it and make it, and we'll pay it. And then it's letting everybody know, letting all the customers know that there may be an increase in the solid waste portion of your utility bill come January. And that might be if the fuel stays the same about what it is, it'll be a 25-cent increase. If it ends up to be more, then it could be 50 cents, could be 75, could even be $1 more on the solid waste portion of the utility bill. But this just creates the mechanism that we can pass along that cost, just because it's part of the bill that we're receiving. So that's what the ordinance is before you. And and stand for questions.
Anybody have any questions?
Feel comfortable with our discussion we had on it last week?
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, I guess.
So I guess I have a question, and I think the wording kind of covers it, but so we are gonna have 25-cent increase for the last half of this year. That's gonna be coming on the contract. This will start on the 1st of January. Now say there's another 25 cents increase for the second half of the year. Will this then just cover that 25-cent increase starting at the end of the year forward, or will it be retroactive and cover the 25 cents that's going to go up now, and it'll be 50 cents starting in January?
No, it won't be retroactive. It'll be whatever the cost is as of January.
Okay.
Whatever the cost is applied to us, that's what we're passing on. Trying to set up that mechanism. And we're basically paying the extra costs we are having now out of that reserve we have in the solid waste fund, which will end up, I think we calculated what's that? Yes. About $600 a month. Over the 6 months, that will be $3,600. So we will pay that out of the reserve that's in the solid waste fund.
Okay, any other questions? Everybody satisfied with the wording of the ordinance?
One motion that we approve ordinance 753, the solid waste contract fuel adjustments.
Have a motion by Commissioner Showalter.
Second.
Have a second by Commissioner Myers. Any other discussion? Roll, please.
Howard.
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Bradley.
Yes.
Showalter.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to D, change order number 1 for the Goodland Street improvements. Kent, if you would, please.
This is a change order based on actual quantities. There was a short section on, and this is regarding the construction project on 17th Street. There was a short section where it was the concrete up against Schooler's concrete on their property. Didn't match exactly. And it basically adjusted the final to do another little strip to match the curb with Schooler's. So that was a little bit of additional concrete. So the total construction project was $814,946. This change order increases that amount to $827,726.90. And so the state paid, we are still well under the grant amount. So the state will still pay 85% of that difference in cost. So our portion of that is 15%, which ends up to be $1,900, $1,917.14. So it was just an adjustment, and it's, now that the project is actually complete. And Mark with EBH is here, but I don't know if you have any information regarding that or not.
I don't have a lot on 17.
Okay. But that was really the only change in the expected quantities that occurred in that project. So that's actually pretty good for any street project.
Anybody have any questions?
Motion that we approve change order number 1.
Have a motion by Commissioner Showalter.
I'll second.
A second by Commissioner Redlin. Any other further discussion? Roll, please.
Showalter,
Yes.
Redmond,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes. Okay, we will move on to E, a CMB license for Mom's Kitchen. Ken, I don't know if you have anything to say about this.
Guess I would defer to Mary regarding the CMB license.
All inspections have been complete and passed, and we got the information back on the background today, and everything is good. They're here if you have any questions. So if you approve it, then we could issue them the license tomorrow once the mayor signs off on it.
Does anybody have any questions regarding the licensing?
Motion that we approve the commercial cereal malt beverage license for Mom's Kitchen.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion by Commissioner Showalter and a second by Commissioner Howard. Any other further discussion? Roll, please.
Myers,
Yes.
Redlin,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Showalter,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes. Thank you, Kat.
Good luck.
Okay, we will move on to F, ordinance number 1755 regarding the 24/7 IRB. Kent?
Actually, but I don't think he's gonna be able to connect, because I don't think we confirmed everything in between time as far as Kevin Cowan, the bond attorney with Gilmore and Bell, was gonna be able to join us, but I don't see that he's called me, and I don't think he has connection information to be able to join. So I'll try to review this as we go along here. This ordinance authorized the issuance of taxable industrial revenue bonds for the 24/7 travel store project. The original setup of this air tax additional project or community improvement district was done in 2019, or at the end of 2019. And the petition was for the creation of the community improvement district. The commission at that time passed a resolution and got it started. They held a hearing. There was no participation from anybody else regarding it. And it's basically, the process is driven by the property owner. There's a request given to the city to create this community improvement district, and also to create a funding mechanism in order to pay for the industrial project. The Kansas statute states if CID involves a sales tax, a public hearing is required, and that's why there was a public hearing. Basically, the district is only the 24/7 store property. So that's the only thing. The estimated costs at the beginning of the project were $4.9 million, and then they implemented a 2% sales tax. So there's an additional 2% that is collected within that community improvement district. They ended up with $6.2 million in project costs for the project. Between 2019 and now, obviously, there's been some variables regarding the project costs. And as long as it's described in the bond agreement, it meets the statutory provisions. And this is where Kevin would be better as far as his expertise in this. But this is a pretty common thing. We've also had community improvement districts at other areas, obviously the Holiday Inn Express and that area over there, as well as the area along Arby's and other area. So it's a typical mechanism that the city has done. There's not a liability to the city. We're basically the conduit in order to provide the funding mechanism to pay for the project. So the 2% sales tax gets sent towards to pay off the bonds for it. So, Mary, have I said anything out of order?
Said it better than I would.
Yeah.
The project, it ends up to be a lease, and that the project will be leased by the issuer to Triplet Incorporated, Kansas Corporation, which is the property owner. So,
So basically, and I think people sometimes struggle with where exactly the extra sales tax goes on these districts. It's not money that is coming to the city that we're issuing for extra sales tax for us. It is strictly for them to be able to pay off their bond debt, and we just have to be the mechanism which the money flows through, basically.
we get to say hi to it.
Yeah.
As it comes in and goes out, but there's nothing legally that we can do with the money. There is a strict requirement that the money is collected, it's gathered, and then it's sent. And that's, in fact, I don't think we would have a significant problem if there was ever any doubt that that was occurring.
Mm-hmm.
There is a small administration fee out of every sales tax distribution that we do put in the general fund, just so you know. That's part of their CID agreement. I think it's 5%,
Yeah.
which statute allows.
And for allowing this mechanism for the property owner to use sales tax proceeds in order to accomplish the project. I mean, he would end up with a far bigger cost going out in the private market
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do it, so.
Does anybody have any questions? Not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move that we approve the ordinance 1755, the 24/7 IRB.
Second that.
A motion by Commissioner Howard and a second by Commissioner Showalter. Any other further discussion? Roll, please.
Redlin,
Yes.
Showalter,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to discussion items, starting with A, ordinance 1754 regarding adopting the 2018 plumbing code. So we have Jeff coming up to the podium.
Hello. Just kind of present this to you more to the regards to the amendments and deletions that we kind of, construction board has gone through the book and wanted me to present it to you guys. We need to work on this before we can actually go forward with the CCC, see the exact wording, how to ICC to present to you guys. So in order to continue on, we need to kind of get your guys' approval and acceptance of the amendments. So I do believe Shannon gave you a copy of the amendments.
Yes. The extra piece of paper.
And then it'd be under the 4-402.1, the amendments and deletions of the 2018 International Plumbing Code. The following sections of the plumbing code adopted by reference in the article are hereby amended or deleted as follows. The first one would be the IPC 101.1, the title, amended to read as follows. The regulations shall be known as the plumbing code of the city of Goodland, hereinafter referred to as this code. And then we go to B, the IPC 106.6.2, the fee schedule, amended to read as followed. The fees for all plumbing work shall be indicated as the following schedule. Chapter 4, Article 5, Section 4-406 of the Goodland City Code, which is our current code now. They didn't want to change. Item C would be the IPC 106.63 fee refunds. They wanted to delete that all the way out, where they wouldn't get a refund for a permit fee issued on the plumbing, since there were so little, the fees. And then D, the IPC 108.4 violation penalties, amended to read as followed. Refer to Chapter 4, Article 5, Section 4-413 of the City Code, which is our current code. They didn't want to change any of that. And then item E, IPC 108.5 stop work orders, amended to read as followed. Upon notice from the code official, work on any plumbing system that is being performed contrary to the provision of this code or in dangerous or unsafe manner shall immediately cease. Such notice shall be in writing and shall be given to the owner of the property or the owner's authorized agent or to the person performing the work. The notice shall state the conditions under which the work is authorized to resume. Where an emergency exists, the code official shall not be required to be given a written notice prior to stop the work. Any person who shall continue any work in or about the structure after have been served with a stop work order, except such work order as the person directed to perform to remove a violation or unsafe condition, shall be liable to the fine of not more than $500. Questions on that one? Kind of a long one.
I'm guessing there is nothing already in the code book regarding stoppages if necessary.
Yes, yeah, we sure do, so. And then item F, the IPC 305.4.1 sewer depth, they just wanted to delete that one all the way around out of the book. So, and keep our current, what we are working with.
Okay.
G, IPC 410.2 small occupancies, amended to read as follows. Drinking fountains shall not be required for occupancy load of 50 or fewer. The current code in the book, I do believe, was 15. So for our community, they wanted to up it. And H, IPC 903.1 roof extensions, amended to read as followed. Open vent pipes that extend through the roof shall be terminated not less than 6 inches above the roof, where the roof is to be used for assembly or cremated, observation deck, sunbathing deck, or similar purposes. Open vent pipes shall terminate not less than 2 feet above the roof. The code book in the for the plumbing code is 7 foot. And they thought that was way too much. So. Anybody have any questions on any of those, or any comments or concerns?
Jeff and I had discussed this earlier today, and that we're going to be communicating with the International Code Council, the ICC. They want specific language in your ordinance or in your code that you put in your code on the adoption of the 2018 IPC, International Plumbing Code, or any of the other codes. So we're going to be working with them. There'll probably be a little bit of revision to this proposed ordinance, but it'll be more regarding the framework. And then what happens with the current code sections that we have, what is deleted, along with the 94 Uniform Plumbing Code, which is the one current. I think it's 94.
Yes.
So, but we have to work with the ICC to get the exact language that they will be okay with. So we will be communicating with them, but wanted to check with you beforehand and let you know. And we're heading in the route and get your direction to keep going that way. To prepare that.
See if you had any questions or you wanted any other changes, I can present back to the building board if, you know, the amendments and deletions. Before we continue with,
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of hard. You know, I personally have not read the new code book. That's the importance of having the boards that we do have is to have people who are willing to step up and do that sort of work. I mean, I'm just curious, on kind of putting you on the spot, and if you don't have a good answer, that's fine. But I mean, between the 1994 book and through that 2018 book, is there a lot of considerable differences between the two regarding codes and plumbing?
not a whole lot. There's more in the commercial side. Yeah, it was, the depth and stuff like that was a little bit different. But that's more realm to the bigger cities where you have a lot more easements, a lot more stuff running through. So that's why they thought they didn't need the sewer at that depth and so forth. So.
Is there any direction, will there be any direction about sewer depth?
What we currently have, I'd have to look at that again, but.
So there is something someplace.
Yeah, no, I mean, me personally, I hear that things are going very well. Like the board has really dove into this project of trying to get things updated. I think we all really appreciate that, and we just want to encourage them and you to keep moving forward with it.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, and we'll move on to B, unfit structure on Caldwell. Assume we'll go ahead and defer to you on that one as well.
Yeah. Not sure, did you guys have any pictures?
Yeah,
Okay.
We do have some in
Okay.
the agenda packet, yes.
Kind of give you a rough rundown of the history. Found some paperwork that somebody had kind of started the process back in 2020. Not sure where it went. But on May 9th, I contacted and talked to Shane. He's actually the husband and one of the owners of the property. He's got some disabilities. I couldn't understand him. Tried. Went ahead, hung up, and gave it another week. And I called his wife, Sherida, left a message on the 16th. Never heard from her. May 23rd, went back to the property. I placed what they call a green tag on the door to contact me. Of course, whether the wind blew it off or what, it wasn't on the door. They, of course, don't live at that residence. May 31st, I went to 303 East 11th and put a green tag on that door. It's in-laws, and they're currently living there. Another week went by, still hadn't heard anything. Let's see. And then went back to the residence on 1514 Caldwell on June 3rd. Placed a letter on there asking them to please contact me by the 10th, or I was going to start the process of the demolition. Sherida finally got a hold of me, spoke with me on June 6th about the property. She's kind of concerned with it. She hasn't been in the house for over 2 years. She was worried about mice and what's in it. There's a history in there why she doesn't want to go into the house. A family member passing away. So there's memories and she doesn't want to go in. I mentioned to her about the property tax, not sure if she's paid. She was going to visit with her family about how to go about the property, whether to possibly deed it over to the city or just go ahead with the demolition. I told her I'd give her a couple days and I'll call her back. Gave her a call back on June 8th, left a message. June 9th, called back, left a message, and the 10th and left a message, and I still haven't heard back from her. So, not sure where she was at on any of that. So, and I did a title search on the property. It did come back that there hasn't been taxes paid on it since 2018 to current, which puts the price up over $3,439.65. So I visited with Kent on that and made the decision, we don't want to have that one deeded over to the city, and we have to cover that cost. So I guess what I'm coming to you guys with is kind of a, a time frame. The next step would be setting up a hearing with the owners of the property and see if they want to propose something to fix it up or to go forward with it. So, anybody have any questions?
I mean, looking at the pictures, I mean, I think it's definitely safe to say that it's a fairly unfit structure at this point. And it sounds like you have done your due diligence for sure, trying to make contact and come up with a solution with them. And there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of reciprocation from them on that end. So I guess I feel maybe at this point, it may be worth being at the point where we set up a hearing for an unfit structure demolition.
Okay.
What you
I'd say
guys-
move forward with that. It's
Yeah.
on the main thoroughfare in town. I think it's something we need to work on probably as quickly as we can.
Sounds good.
According, to our ordinance, we got to set it up and it's got to be published
Mhm.
for 30 days prior to the hearing, so. We can set one, so.
Sounds like we have consensus to do so.
All right.
Thank you.
You bet.
And while you're there, we have an update on the unfit structure on Colorado.
You bet. I did take some new photos of the property. We presented it to you, and the gentleman did come in and talk to me that day in his office, which was June 6th. And he was saying he was going to want to fix up the property a little bit, clean it up. He was proposing to get some utilities turned on. And I know he did reach out to Neil on the utilities for sewer and water. If I'm correct, he thought it was too much. He was going to go forward with it.
Yeah, just put that property up. It's gonna be $4,000 or $5,000 with the water service in there, and we will have to go from where we move off to the structure and we put it on more ways.
Remind me, I'm just trying to remember. There currently is a property on there with utilities, right? But there's additional properties on there as well, houses that don't have utilities.
Yes, he has a house on 16th Street adjacent to it, and there's no utilities on at that residence, but he can have them if he would turn those on.
But it's plumbed for it, yeah.
Yes. And he was wanting to at least save one of the trailer houses, make it livable, and the other one he asked if he can make it into a storage unit, and I said, no, he can't do that, so. And I've got some before photos, a month difference, if you guys want to look at them. All we were kind of talking about the last meeting was doing how much time again, so this was today's photo, and that was the first. So he's made a little bit of improvement, but not a whole lot.
Yeah.
While I was there today, of course, he wasn't there.
Yeah.
He did get his animals back, his dogs back, and they're in the fenced-in yard in front of the house on 16th Street, and you better go out and knock on the door. A couple of big dogs.
Yeah, I know we had kind of discussed, we wanted to allow him time, as long as he's willing to
Keep going.
to put some effort into it, to work at it, Said it looks like he's done a little bit, but not a whole lot. I do kind of wonder what his motivation is for the property, I don't know. And the fact that, you know, he did make contact regarding utilities and stuff, and, you know, wasn't satisfied with
The price.
the price of what that may cost, you know, but, yeah, I don't know, it's tough.
Mhm.
I don't know if we want to allow him more time to see if he's willing to clean things up more before we move forward with trying to schedule any kind of a hearing or anything, or what do you guys think?
Personally, I'd probably give him another month to try to make some kind of improvement and move forward.
So I guess if he's unwilling or unable to put utilities in the houses, it's almost kind of a moot point, you know, if we're gonna allow him time to clean it up or not, if he's, then won't be allowed to have it on there anyway, if it's not, you know, plumbed in an actual residence. So
I did visit him with the one trailer. It's kind of a sentimental thing. It was his dad's. I mentioned to him, well, if anything, if you can afford to move it to a trailer park, and have the utilities there, and then we can take down the other trailer and clean up the property. So I did mention that to him. He didn't know much about that yet. So.
today's previous. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely in agreement that we should offer him a little more time, you know, to continue to think about it and try to decide if and what he can do, and just maybe make sure that he's aware that, you know, we won't sit idle forever regarding the property. At some point, something will need to be done either on his behalf or ours, you know, and we would prefer it be his if you could, but.
I can write up a letter tomorrow and see if I can catch him tomorrow. If not, see if the police department can see him and serve him, you know, and
Right.
give them a copy of it. That way he can make sure he gets a letter that give him another 30 days, and I'll come back and check in with him.
Any other thoughts? Think that's fair?
That's fair.
I think that's
That is for you.
Okay, great, thank you, Jeff. And the last thing on the discussion item is the 2023 budget initial presentation. I believe the hope and the idea is to go ahead and move that towards the end of the meeting, or you want to do that now?
I think it would be preferable to go ahead and take care of the remaining items on the agenda and then come back to the budget. In case there's anyone in the audience that is not here to listen to every detail of the proposed budget. So,
Okay, everybody okay with moving it until after reports?
That's fine.
Okay, and then we will move to reports, starting with Kent.
I don't even know. The manager memo is included in your packet, but in addition to that, the 17th Street project has been completed, obviously with the change order we had earlier. They have completed that project. Spore Construction themselves are now started on the project at the senior center, even though that is not a city property. We are coordinating with them on the project, and the streets department is doing a small section, basically the connection between the parking spaces and the street itself. So I may ask Kenton to speak exactly what we're involved with there.
Basically, all we're doing is gonna put the new gutter back in. Where they're attaching, they had to tear out the old gutter. It wasn't extremely bad, but everything is gonna be brand new around there, so they shouldn't have any issues for a long time. That's all we're doing, and we're kind of working with them because they have to. They can't do the whole project all at once, so they're going to pour tomorrow, and then we're going to go in and get the gutter formed up and hopefully pour Thursday. and then the street side Friday, and then they have to kind of wait for that to set up before they can park on that. That way the customers can still move around, so, yeah.
And then next week sometime probably will be, well, they gotta tear out on the east side of the building,
Yeah.
or next to Center Street. And then we'll coordinate with them on that part of the project.
And that part won't be as a rush, because they'll have that front side on 15th opened up, so. But it's a rush for us to get in there, so they can get to the other side ASAP. So.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
Oh, thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
And as far as the airport runway project out there, we have Mark here from EBH being the pinch hitter to provide the details regarding the airport project runway.
Good evening. Out the airport, phase 1 is pretty much complete. Yeah, it's the section that's west of the main runway. We just have joint sealing and painting to do, and we're going to do that pretty much at the end with everything else. Phase 2 is the section that we had to close down the main runway Monday through Friday, and then we opened that up on the weekends. Opened that up so Eagle Med could get in here to make sure they got back into their hangar and were able to get their meds and everything in the evening. And so that all went really well. Everybody did really good out there with all that. We ended up opening the runway completely back up 4 days early. So phase 2 is in the same section as phase 1. Just need to do joint sealing, paint, and then at the end we'll do a little bit of electrical right there too. So phase 3, we are currently in that. We've treated the base with the cement. We've mixed it the entire length of phase 3, which is to the end of the runway with the 500-foot extension. Right now we're setting up string line to do the trimming, and then next week we should be doing 2 days of concrete, which will do half of that. And then the following week we'll do 2 more days, and we will have the runway poured out. So later this week we're hoping to get additional cement to finish the turnaround pad with the cement treated base. We are having issues getting trucking to get us enough cement right now. That is why they're not really pressing real hard right now. We only have about 4 guys working out there currently, so if anybody's wondering what's going on, they're pulling their guys to go work other jobs while they wait for cement to transport to job site.
Sure.
So they're turning over every rock trying to get other companies to transport. Not having very good luck. One of the other issues we're having currently is getting rock delivered. A lot of the truckers don't want to deliver the rock because they're not paid as much as some other loads that they could get. So Smoky Hill's actually paying them more to bring in rock, just to get the rock here, so that when we get ready to go with concrete, we can do that. So those are a couple of the things that, a couple of the problems that we're having. I don't foresee it being an overall delay to the project. It's just, if you drive out there, there's not a lot going on this week. It's really slow. So next week also, we should have the electricians on site start working on tearing down the PAPIs. They're at the east end of the project. We have to have an FAA guy on site to do that. They can't touch anything in the PAPIs without him being here. So he should be here for the next 2 weeks as they tear it down. And then they'll take inventory and stock and see what they need to replace, and then get that stuff ordered. My understanding on that is that will take several months to get the items for the PAPIs ordered in. And so we may not, when we reopen the runway, the crosswind runway, it will probably be without the PAPIs at the east end. So that is something that I was informed of today by Darren Neufeld, so he was the engineer on the project. Other than that, All of our tests have met requirements. Our strength's coming back on our core is good. Also, 17th Street cores are coming back 1,000 PSI above what the mix design called for. So getting really good concrete on both those projects, and should be good there. So questions?
No, I don't think so. 17th Street looks good, and it sounds like everything's good at the airport, so.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
There's, Dustin had informed me, he had, as far as the electric pole parts purchased for Highway 24 project completion, they ordered the remaining parts for that lighting project. They obtained quotes from three vendors, I believe. They ended up with 2 quotes that were pretty darn close to each other. And it was basically a purchase of 7,000 feet of 1-inch PVC sweeps and couplings. So, Dustin, I don't mean to take anything away from you if you wanted to say anything regarding it.
PVC is really expensive.
I see that.
Could have known this 2-3 years ago, we could have bought 10,000, but you just don't know.
Yeah.
It's a, I mean, 4-inch PVC. 4-inch PVC probably a year ago, 2 years ago, was $1.75 a foot. Now it's about $9.50. So it's crazy. But we've had these poles for 2 years since we've done the other part of the project, and I'd hate for them just to sit in that yard another 2 or 3 years, trying to let that price go down, because it could very well go up. We just don't know when that's coming in. So we're better off completing the project and making that entrance look presentable. So, but yeah, they're pretty close. I think Border States probably was the lowest by a few $100. So. But yeah, that's PVC is just outrageous right now.
Matches about everything else right now, too.
Yeah, it's not good.
So we were just following the purchasing policy as was approved by the commission. And that project will complete the lighting basically from Eustis, where the curve starts, out to exit 19.
Yeah.
So,
That'll look good when it's all finished up, I think. Yeah.
so that'll be done.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And also regarding the community barbecue, if we have, if or when we have the community barbecue as part of the, talked to you last time about the possibility of having it coordinated with the final concert in the park this summer, which will be at Stever Park on August 12th. We're looking at for now we have no idea. Now I'll ask you what numbers we should actually plan for if that actually happens. We'd actually plan for about 400. And there'll be some other things going on that day. We're looking at having since it's the end of the summer, free pool day. A couple other things. The rec is going to have a couple other things that occurs on that day, including a Tiny Tykes triathlon and a couple other things. So, it won't be the only other thing, and the community barbecue would be before and then running into the same time as when the concert starts at that corner. So But it will end up costing us just under 1,200 if we do various things. And it'll be for a meal that includes hamburgers and hot dogs and the accoutrements, chips and drinks and stuff, etc. And if you would like that to be accomplished, staff is going to be going ahead and completing preparations to make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, I still think it'd be a good idea. I do think that the concert series has been going over well. The community already, we've been to a couple of them, and, there's been a good crowd in the parks for those already, so I think people are really enjoying those. And have it in line with other things going on as well during that day, it could be a good opportunity to get a bunch of people out. So I still think it sounds great, and I think 400 is probably a fair number to expect. I don't imagine it would probably be more than that, but.
Like they've done in previously. If there's too much, then it could be, there's a couple different routes we can go with that. But the reason, well, the SCCD, Sherman County Community Development, is just basically we'll have a flyer out that's basically a return to school bash. And that's why there's a number of events that will occur. Or at least the rec is getting involved with that.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll do that. I don't think I have other questions.
Are you still okay with that? Yep. All right, anything else?
I don't think so. I think, I'm trying to think if I'm forgetting someone in the audit, one of the department heads, as far as explaining where they're at. Was it? Okay, Chief, go ahead. Oh, K-9, yes. Why don't you explain that?
So, we finally got an appointment, a training date for the K-9 to become patrol certified. So he will be leaving August 1st, and he'll be gone 4 to 6 weeks for that training. And then, of course, when he gets back, there'll be continuous training on that, as well, but that'll be here. So, do y'all have any questions about that, or?
Where is he going?
Colorado Springs.
In Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
And there's an officer that goes too, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because he's going to learn commands, he's going to learn, they put really strict obedience, so he has to be able to interact, and the bond with the two are already there. So now it's just to take it a step further, and where he learns commands, and it's a different thing because he won't be able to be off leash and all that. So they're very strict about commands and stuff like that. So.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
And I just found this out, but there are over 400 law enforcement agencies in the state of Kansas, and we were 1 out of 7 chosen to be a, for lack of a better word, guinea pig on a state accreditation program. They have I guess it would be federal CLIA, you know about CLIA. This would just be for the state of Kansas accreditation. I still have to get a lot more information, but I will keep involved in that, of course, and make sure we can even do some of the things that they may want us to do. Like I said, it's real early. They just called and talked to me and asked me if we'd be interested in that. It's like I said, it's only 7 agencies throughout the state were chosen, and we were one of them, so I wanted to kind of throw that out there just so you kind of knew what it was about, but I'll have more information for everyone, as it progresses, so.
Awesome.
Sounds
Great.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's about all I have, sir.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for city manager? All right, thank you, Ken. Okay, we'll move on to city commissioner reports. Start down here with Commissioner Showalter.
Quick thank you to the city departments that were involved in all the planning and setup for reunion this weekend. It was a good success. Had a lot of people in town. I know there was quite an economic impact this weekend from the number of visitors that were in town. I know Danny, you helped me out quite a bit. Appreciate that. And so just every department that played a part in that, thank you very much for that.
I want to jump on that too. It went well since I'm on Main Street, and it went off without a hitch. You guys did a great job.
Same note, good thanks to all the employees, whether they sit in the offices or they're out working in the heat and everything. Thank you to all that you guys do, and it's greatly appreciated.
Yep. Okay. Go ahead.
I echo that same thing. We had a good turnout for reunion. Everything went smooth. We had a good turnout for the Freedom Fest last night too. So yeah, thank you guys for everything you do.
Yep, it was a very good weekend. All over the place around town, and there was a lot of groups and a lot of people who all came together to make everything happen this weekend. It was a very, very good weekend for the city of Goodland. All right, I don't have anything else, I don't think. So on that, we will move on to our 2023 budget initial presentation.
Anyone in the crowd, if you want to go, you can.
Wow.
I tell ya.
There was one other thing Danny mentioned me today, that he did remember to turn off the sprinklers at Rosewood Park. I was gonna call it a different name, I didn't want to do that. It's probably happened before that it wasn't turned off. I included in your packet a little bit of a communication form regarding the budget, and that's probably the starting point as far as the information. And then we provided this book, and we will get through a part of that book tonight. We will not get through the entire book.
What?
Sorry, I didn't spend an extra weekend day to get the rest of the presentation done. But I do want to thank all the department heads and what they've been involved with to the budget to this point. And that way I can make them upset for when we get to these actual cuts that come about. But we had an initial, and as far as the city clerk and the entire department trying to make this happen. Mary is spending a lot of additional time on it, but we started with a proposal. Was talking to department heads over the last couple months, and then we ended up in June receiving our estimate for the assessed valuation. And the assessed valuation last year was at 35 million and change, and this year is at 37,433,732. So it's about, in each mill would generate they told us last year, and it's for this year's budget for 2022, would generate $35,000. Then with this preliminary estimate, each mill would generate $37,433. Well, the county clerk, when she gave us the assessed valuation estimate, she also gave us what would be the RNR rate, the revenue neutral rate. And in order to meet that revenue neutral rate, last year we had a budget that included 48 mills and change. This year, the revenue neutral rate would be 45 mills, 0.811. So that's an actual reduction of 3 mills to generate the same amount of revenue. And that's what the RNR rate is. It states you have to do certain things if you aren't able to meet that actual same rate that generates the same amount of dollars or less. So once we received that, that put, as far as staff goes, in a lot of consideration. And from the initial budget that we had, we looked at it and we said we need to make some adjustments, because we were about several $100,000 from that R&R rate. And so we made those adjustments, and then we got to a point where we said we need to ask the commission, what's your direction? Because we made enough cuts in order to get it down to a point where it's just a smidgen below last year's rate at 48 mills, what it would generate. And if we want to go the rest of the way down to that 45 mills, then we'll have to do about $115,000 in additional cuts. And we can come up with that, but I just wanted to go through that and say that kind of sets the table for how we discuss things at this point. So, and since that is such an overriding question and it kind of needs an immediate answer, as far as we need to tell the county clerk by July 20th whether we are going to meet that R&R rate or not. So that's why there's so much emphasis on the general fund and the other tax funds, but there's less opportunities to make adjustments to those. And that's why I have that as the primary question at this point. So as we go through this, and we'll be able to go through all these different pages that are included in this book for you, but and hopefully make a little bit more sense to you about how this budget is prepared. So
one quick question, if I could.
sure.
So on the 20th, you said we need to let her know if we're going to meet that rate or not. Do we need to let her know if we're going to meet that rate or if we are going to have a hearing?
If we're going to have a hearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whether or not we want to have a hearing or not. Because we can still have, we can meet it, but still decide to have a hearing.
Yeah, if we have any chance that we're going to exceed that rate, we need to have the hearing. If we wouldn't have the hearing, and even if we set the budget at 45 some odd mills, and then they give us the final valuation, you guys had this discussion last year as well. They give us the preliminary assessed valuation in June. But then there's different people protest their assessed valuation, or there's different properties that get changed for whatever reason. And then you end up, the county clerk tells you your final assessed evaluation in the end of October, beginning of November timeframe. Because then shortly after that, they send out the tax notices. Well, we'll have already completed our budget and we'll have the amount set already for how much money we need to generate through our property taxes. Well, and if our assessed valuation, the valuation goes down between, let's say instead of 37 million and something, there's a bunch of people that protest, or, I mean, I'm just using that as an example. That's not the main reason it changes, but there's something about the property that changes, and then it gets down to 36 million and change. Well, that difference between 37 and 36, now you're generating only $36,000 per mil instead of $37,000 per mil. And so what you thought at 40, you needed 45 mils to generate that big number we're going to generate, around $700,000 dollars. Well, it's more than that in property taxes because it's multiple funds. But for the general fund, it'd be 700,000 and change. But if then you can't generate it at $36,000 a mil, you need more, and so you end up. Then the county clerk takes that final assessed valuation, and all she's really required by statute, and that's the way it has to work, is well, they need $1 million, per se, in property taxes. Well, 37,000 divides into $1 million, comes out with whatever that answer is. And obviously 36,000 takes more to get there. And then all of a sudden you're exceeding the R&R rate when you had no intention to not exceed it. And then you end up, then you've exceeded it, you've violated state law, and they have a penalty. And the penalty is that part of that money needs to get returned. So, and it gets to be a real big mess in order to do that. So, probably the hardest question, I'm not going to ask for an answer tonight. I mean, you can give me an answer tonight, but I want you guys to consider it as we go. And we have one more meeting before that July 20th deadline date. But we will need to know at the next meeting, at July 18th, whether we want to try to meet that revenue neutral rate of 45 mils. And this basically penalizes us for having increased valuation, or that's what I view it as. You know, I was used to, for 17 years, working at a couple other communities, trying to meet that, the tax rate and keep it level. Well, now there's an extra challenge, and it's not even the rate. Now you have to meet the same exact dollars for that are generated by property taxes. And I guess I'll make this comment now. For some folks, with their valuation hasn't increased, because that increase in valuation from 35 million to 37 million, that's the total valuation. Property A at Brooks' house may have stayed the same. Property B at JJ's house may have gone up in value. But if we're going to lower the mills, lower the tax rate, the person's house who stayed the same in valuation would actually get a tax cut in the number, the portion of the property taxes that goes to the city. You realize that there's a portion that goes to us, portion goes to the school district, portion goes to the county, and a very small portion goes to the state. But the portion that for the city, that would actually be cut for a person who has the same valuation. Now, if their valuation has increased a lot, then it's the kind of the opposite situation. Maybe it's not even enough of a cut. So to me, it's uneven. You know, it's all the various properties will have different answers regarding that. And to try to meet that dollar amount, especially when we have increased costs, I mean, we just heard it again tonight regarding something as simple as PVC and everything else. And part of the presentation I'll show you is that our funding mechanisms for stuff, we really only have 3 options. We have property taxes, we have sales taxes, and we have user fees. Now, if property taxes is going to stay exactly the same level, and every single year stays at that same dollar amount, that gets to be real difficult. And it can be a concept that is welcomed, but it makes things quite a bit more challenging. Just like we're dealing with right now, last year, the commission had an R&R hearing, but they decided to meet the R&R rate as best they could. And they went from 50 mills down to 48. Well, now 50 isn't even a discussion. 48 is the starting point, and now it's going to be 45. So we'll have dropped almost 5 mills in 2 years if we go after the R&R rate. And if that continues, if valuations continue to increase, that will keep happening, if we choose. Now, the procedure is we notify the county clerk, and then there's a process, and we have a public hearing, and there's still the authority for the city commission to decide what rate they want to put it in. And that's, so there isn't a veto in what the city commission finally decides regarding the budget. But you have to have that hearing in order to follow state statute to make it happen. So does that make sense? Kind of rambling on regarding the R&R rate, when to me it's like about the only question that comes about. But
Like I said, it is a very important question that we have to decide early on in the process, because it does make a big determination as to what can be budgeted into the budget, So me personally, I feel like what we did last year, we decided to meet the rate and have the hearing. Like I said, even if we could have chosen to try to meet the rate and not have the hearing, but like you said, if we would have done that and the valuation would have been up, then we would have been in violation. Even though we had decided to meet the rate, the final valuation determined that it was higher than what we had said it was going to be, and we would have been in violation of that. So I kind of feel like my thoughts are, regardless, and then we'll go over this and everybody kind of come with your feelings of where you think the budget needs to go. But I think that having the hearing one way or the other, regardless of how they go, is probably an important thing we need to consider.
Josh, can you go ahead to the next slide? What we want to do with this budget, we want to have a balanced budget. We want to have secure reserves. We want to make our operations sustainable. Sometimes people look at this as, well, it's a one-year budget. Well, the city's been around for 30, 40 years. We have to look beyond the 1 year. We can make it last 1 year, but we need to start up the following year as well. So, we've made decisions over the last few months as far as staff investments, and we've also done different things to try to make sure our facilities and our infrastructure are the improvements. So there's too long a list to try to get done, but we do make improvements. And if we do have the opportunity to make capital investments to diversify the revenue base, we should try to do that. Go ahead. The economic conditions right now, locally it's fairly steady, but there's a lot of uncertainty. This is probably the hardest thing about this year's budget process, is what is our estimates for next year? Your guess. I mean, we make educated guesses at times. The sales taxes remain steady at this point. But as we've seen, and I mentioned this because this was one of our topics during our workshop sessions at the beginning of the year, as far as the strategic planning, then inflation effects. Every purchase right now is either difficult in either availability, price, or delivery. I mean, there's sometimes, whether Neil says it or somebody else, and Dustin said it a couple different times, you know, they're basically saying it'll be a year before it can be delivered. And that's why I think one of the themes that we need to keep in mind is the need to have flexibility to meet those demands that result from inflation effects. I don't know entirely what that's going to be, but we'll take a look at it. Go ahead to the next one, John. That's where we have the revenues for the general fund. We have taxes and fees, we have licenses, we have charges for service. We have a little bit of fines, a little bit of intergovernmental, very little investment. And then there's a couple other minor ones. And then we split it up into those departments. And there's 13 departments listed there. And we'll go through each one of those. Go ahead. Right now, the total revenues, and you can turn to, after your general tab, and then the bottom of page 3. You can look at those numbers in dark, black or bolded. Shows total revenues are $3,129,588. That's the total. And then that includes a cash balance so it makes it $3,623,000 in the right column, 118. You notice that this budget currently, you notice that shows is still less than the subtotal for 2020.
Yep.
At 3670. Now there's a little bit more cash balance, but that's interesting to me. We are spending down the fund balance in general fund as we go through these things. And that's part of that reason is because of the different things we've had to purchase, you know, over the last couple, 3 years. And then it shows the expenditures down below. But of all these different line items as far as revenues go, on these 2 pages, there's 3 main legs. And go ahead to the next little pie chart, Josh. That probably shows. Wait, I gotta make the type bigger. The blue pie is 23%. The transfers, and that's transfers from the utility funds, is 27%. And the sales tax shows is 34%, the yellow. And there's a number of other smaller pie slices. But as far as our revenues, the 3 main ones and the ones that will vary or can vary to a great degree are all in those 3 main slices. All the other little slices, they're not going to vary a huge amount. You're not going to suddenly get $300,000 in motor vehicle taxes. you're not gonna suddenly get 300,000 in franchise fees. So our choices are basically one of those three: property taxes, sales transfers, or sales taxes. Now, part of the sales tax, and you'll notice that about almost halfway down on that first page of revenues, it says 0122 sales tax school district. That is just a pass-through. You know, we're collecting it on behalf of the school district, which is great, but we can't use it for anything that the city does. So if you take that out, like right there, it shows sales taxes are 34%. Well, now, go ahead. If we make the sales tax revenue without the pass-through sales tax portion, what we end up with is, and you can go to the next pie chart, then the pie slices change a little bit. The property tax becomes 26% instead of 24%. The sales tax, instead of 34%, is only 25%. And then the user transfer from the user fees is over 30%. So, and part of the changes we did, that Mary recommended and suggested, and that we took, because we needed to do those things. I just put it on you. I just want to credit an idea. She didn't like that idea. I actually had to twist her arm. And,
So, while we're on this,
sure.
real quick, discussing, you know, sales tax and property tax and everything. So, we currently have, what, 9% is what our sales tax is in town right now?
Yes.
So, of that 9%, the sales tax that goes to our revenue is 0.5% of that, correct?
Correct.
So, and so I think there's always a lot of question there too regarding, you know, people asking about sales tax, you know, and why we're charging so much. As far as the city is concerned, you know, that's what we're getting for our revenue is for the budget for the city is roughly 0.5% of that 9%. So.
State takes
6.5. And there may be, I hope it doesn't come to that point, because I think it's going to hurt communities. It would hurt us too, but it would hurt other communities far more. But you notice that there's, you know, advertisements now and everything else that they're so happy that they've cut the food sales tax. That's the state's portion of it. So the 6.5% of the 9% on food will get cut gradually over the next
3 years.
3 years, I think. But there may be pressure to have the counties or the city's sales tax do the same thing regarding food, which I think would be devastating to a lot of Kansas cities. I mean, the league had to argue at the state legislature because the original bill had it was going to apply the entire sales tax. And they said, don't do that to cities and towns, because there's some cities that's all they have as far as sales tax generation. Without something replacing it. So they took that out, and it doesn't apply to the city or county's portion. But there may be pressure from folks, well, why don't you take care of that for you? And that would be a very difficult decision. Especially when we don't get that much of the 9% to start with. Now, 1% of that sales tax is for road sales tax. That's split up, and we do get a portion of that. But, you know, and then another 1% is split, and that's for general purposes. And then there's a little quarter, you know. But as far as the state takes the vast majority of that sales tax. So, and that's hard for people to understand. I understand that. But thank you for bringing that up, Aaron.
Okay. Didn't mean to hijack. Continue, please.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah.
The other thing regarding sales tax, when you look it up there, you know, it's not easy to increase that. It would take a ballot issue. And then the sales tax is also variable. It can go up and it can come down. You know, if inflation keeps going quite a bit, you know, people then restrict their expenditures to just food, fuel, and rent or mortgage. There's not many optional purchases that would generate additional sales tax that will be done. So there could be an argument made that the sales tax, I'm glad it's steady right now. We haven't seen that effect yet. But that sales tax could drop. Then what do? Well, you have all those reserves. Like I said, you don't want to use up all the reserves in 1 year, that's for sure. So we have the options of the property tax, the transfers from the utility funds, or the sales taxes as far as additional revenue. And then we work on expenditures, and that's what we did. We started at a far different point than this. We've also, but I guess I'll go through the expenditures at this point. Go ahead, Josh, the next. That just shows the general valuation for the last 20 years. Basically, for about 10 years, we hung pretty close to the same valuation, right around 25 million. And then finally it starts increasing, and then we have this net revenue rate come about. Okay, going through the different departments. This format for the budget basically shows you the actuals for the 20 and 21. Then it shows the budget and revised for 22. And then it shows the proposed budget for 23. And then there are grouped as far as the line items, as far as the personnel services, the contractual, the commodities portion, and then the capital. And then our transfers, one thing that allows us to do this is the transfers to the SURF, the MRF, and the GERF. We like the IRF sound. SURF stands for capital improvement. MRF is mechanical equipment reserve fund. And then grant, obviously GERF is grant improvement. So with the various departments, we transfer or schedule transfers to those three different things. And that allows us not to have a huge elephant in 1 year, but to plan it out over a number of years. That helps in some ways. In other ways, it can hurt because we have these scheduled transfers, and we did that with a couple of them as we go along through this, and we will eliminate it for this year. Well, then we need to get back on track next year with that particular transfer in order to meet that particular project we want to accomplish at some point, if it hasn't been completely funded already. We did that with a couple because we needed to get it to that point. After these 2 pages of the general government, it shows you a summary page that goes over what the function of that department fund is. what the objectives for this budget, which goes over most of the line items, especially if there's changes to the line items, and also if there's several items within a line item. Just like in this general government, professional services, which is halfway through contractual services, the contractual portion, it's $80,000. Well, that includes the amount for the city attorney. It also includes elevator maintenance, IT subscriptions, surveys, other legal things that we'll have to do. We have planning consultant fees and other professional services like update city codes. But we took out the grant writer consultant. That may or may not be what you want to do. We can put that back in, but that's an example. And we're trying to be absolutely clear what's included in that amount and what's the portion dedicated to it. It also, a little ways down from that, the funding for the donations approved by the commission. Then it lists out the different donations. We also get to pay property taxes. So on a couple things, a couple properties in the city, we spend it out of here. But that gives you a lot more information than I'm going to go through tonight. We also list the number of staff that is paid out of this particular fund. Where this fund is paid, or if it has a dedicated funding source that isn't just the whole general fund. And then also any actions that we take to control costs or mitigate costs, and what do we see as the biggest challenges. And we asked each of the department heads to fill this out for their particular departments. So, or we worked with them to try to get something accomplished for each of those. So at least gives a background for that department. But as far as this general government, and I go over that to just go over the format.
Mhm.
So it's fairly understandable. As far as the general government, we did have a small decrease in the personnel services, and that's because the building inspector and myself are going to share a person rather than having one person in the building inspector's office and one person as my assistant. So it's basically doing that. She is doing some things for Jeff and she does things for myself. So I've seen it. I think that's an important thing, but right now I think we can accomplish it with one person. It would be better if there was a dedicated person for building inspection, but that's one of the areas we decided that's something we can do. The contractual, it did have some increase, but you notice part of this ad is the expectation regarding the school district sales tax, just because the current year is up. Whether that continues through next year, but since it's a pass-through, that doesn't help our budget, because we'll change it on the revenue side. If we change it on the expense, it just stays the same, so it's just a pass-through. But the insurance is, and that's the insurance for the property, umbrella, those type of things, liability insurance. That's one of the major insurance line items. That increased a little bit, and then, like I mentioned earlier, the professional services. But it really wasn't. Most of that increase is due to the school district sales tax. The commodities, there's a little bit additional as far as in equipment maintenance and repair. It's kind of an overall thing for this building, for our HVAC equipment and everything else that's associated with this building. And we did keep in here, there's no capital outlay within this particular department. But the transfers, we did keep the dispatch remodel payback. We're doing that over time. And we removed the portion for the vehicle, and then we still have the 20,000 for the grant improvement reserve fund. So that's the general government. Any questions, concerns, comments, complaints regarding that? And so, what was the total on that? I guess it does have a $50-some thousand increase still in that, but 30,000 of that is that school district sales tax. And then a couple of the others, you know, insurance and everything else. It's not an easy area to find additional cuts. Police. We did receive a reply saying that we are not able to go any further regarding the COPS grant, at least this year. So the personnel, the increase in costs, it's because of the changes we made regarding the salary schedule. And I guess I should tell you, one of the basis on this that we have in it, and that's one of the changes we can make eventually if you would like to, is, you know, what we have presented regarding that, adopting that salary schedule. You know, we have that 12-step schedule that you move up step by step. But then every year, the intention is make a decision. Now, whether that's a decision to move the entire schedule or not, that's part of the budget process. And what this budget includes is a 3% increase for that entire schedule to go up. Now, the people move up a step as long as everything's good, or if they pass certain certifications or other things, they'll have an increase with that as well. But the personnel costs that are within this budget include moving that entire schedule up 3%. And then it includes the cost for the individuals within the departments. So that's how we're trying to keep pace regarding that. Now, is 3% adequate? I don't know. You know, when inflation officially is 8%, when it's, you know, it's more than that. So, but that's the increase. Now, and I asked Mary to give me a calculation. Moving that salary schedule up, each 1% costs 25 grand approximately for all the employees involved. That's the schedule. So that's the cost. So if we would want to reduce it to 2%, to 1%, to 0, then we do multiples of 25, 26 grand. So that just gives you an idea. Or to go the other way, to go 4%, 5%. It would cost that much more to do that. But that will be a question by the public at any point. So we wanted to state it up front. That's what it costs. In the police, we have, and we did increase costs, but there's no addition by the COPS grant. The contractual, there's a minimal increase. It's hardly anything. The commodities, the gas, we increased it by 6,000. It's about 30% increase. Is that enough? Yeah.
Who knows?
Don't know. That's basically that entire, there's a little bit other small increases there. And then the new equipment, that's still in the capital outlays regarding the body dash cam payment. And then we have a transfer to SURF and a transfer to MERV. But we did make several cuts in the MERV in order to reach our goal. Or at least to this point. Shouldn't even say it's a goal, it's just what staff had to do to present it. Get it to a point. And then there's more significant descriptions of everything within the police department, obviously. And it gives you some additional information about what they're trying to do to mitigate costs and what they see as the biggest challenges up ahead. So, municipal court. There's hardly any increase overall with this, obviously, as you can see. So, we do have some exposure in this, obviously with prisoner care and indigent defense. Those budget line items, I always want to make mention of that just because there's a couple things we can't control. We can control it a little bit, but we can't control it entirely.
We didn't increase, did we? We budgeted 2022. Am I not reading that right?
No, we didn't increase it at all, but I'm just telling you that
Okay,
there's some exposure there that,
sure. Yeah, I think in her notes that's what she stated, that you may not seem it's important, but it needs to be there, from what I was reading.
yeah. And you never know when a bigger case may come about and people require those things. The animal control, there is a little bit of an increase. I don't know whether that's a good figure or not.
Is this in regards to her reaching out to us?
Well, it's regarding the pound contract. There's two different contracts, and the pound contract is with the county, but we fund a portion of it, a greater portion. So, and that contract has not been redone since 2010. So at some point there needs to be an adjustment made. Now, the other portion, and I may ask the chief or Mary, when was the last time we revisited the other portion that we paid Kathy out of? Same time? Okay. So, there's an amount. I don't know if that's adequate enough or not. That's an amount put in there. The van transportation. The personnel went up a little bit, but we need to be able to have van drivers, and I'm expecting us to actually have the service used more as gas continues to go up. And to be able to have competent drivers, which they do change every once in a while. And then obviously gasoline and oil went up a little bit, went up $1,000. Yet again, there's another area. And I think there's a little bit more, where am I missing? I should look at my notes, that's why I put them up there.
$400 in contractual services.
Yeah,
How much?
which is the printing or advertising required by the grant. And other advertising that we do. We do have a portion on the transfer to Murph there for a new van. We didn't take that out as yet. We want to keep that. It's pretty minimal. I think we may have reduced it. We didn't eliminate it. The fire department is next, and this is just the requirements as per the agreement for the combined Sherman County Fire Department.
How's that number determined?
It is a certain percentage.
It's based upon the percentages. When they did it, they decided that in 2020, the city paid this much, the county paid this much. So basically, I took the 2020 budget, and that's what I put in there. Because that year, we were 48 point whatever percent of of what it cost for fire, and they were 51 whatever.
I see.
But it's based upon your 2020, so that's what I put as the year, is the amount we had in our 2020 budget.
Thank you.
And Brian did complete the information on the summary pages, quite a bit of information. So. Building inspection. Do have a change. We do, as far as sharing the administrative assistant with the city manager. The contractual, we did reduce slightly the professional services, and if you see in the summary, the professional services, it's basically regarding weed and nuisance control, but the majority of it is building demo, nuisance abatement, tree removal. That's 45 grand of that 52. So if you don't want to go after some additional buildings, we can reduce them. Or if that amount's not enough, we can increase that if you would like. But I think we're going to have enough properties in the pipeline to address. Otherwise, there's really no changes from the prior year. The schooling, we're limiting as far as the additional schooling, that 2 additional certifications. So we can get that done. Street and alley. Obviously, there's an increase to cover as far as personnel costs, but the total contractual, the bulk fuel purchases was increased from 40 to 55,000. Is that enough?
Hope so.
We basically expended the budget. I think we're almost at that point this part of the year, but we won't have to fill again until the end of the year. So Kenton's doing all he can as far as, and the other folks regarding that. So, and you notice the one right below that, the bulk fuel purchases, the other utilities. There's an increase in most of the departments with that, as far as the gas increase. So, natural gas, which we don't control. Is there any other utility I'm missing? On other utilities, Mary?
No, I think there's phones, is their phone paid out of their phone line? Yeah, their phone would be out of there too.
The phone is involved with that as well. There is an equipment maintenance and repair increase. You know, our equipment's, there's a long list of equipment that Kenton included at the end of his, asked him to include it. But to give you an idea of the number of vehicles that are involved. And also the public, that it isn't just the pickup trucks, there's an awful lot of other pieces of equipment that need maintenance. The capital outlay, there's no change other than there's no new equipment, but there's no change on the building and land, which is actually, what is that? Oh, that's the valley and alley repair that Kenton does on an annual basis. And then the transfers to SURF and MRF, those have been reduced significantly. You will see those in the list of different things that we did do to get to this point. There's still 110,000 between the two of them. But, you know, last year it was significantly more than that. 50. So it's, those are tough decisions that we have to do. So, it's basically holding off on a couple items another year. Street sweeper and the skid loader mini excavator. That's tough. You know, need the right tools to do the job, but as you can see as we're going through this, there isn't a lot of choices what to do. But his overall budget, as far as for the streets and alleys, we're still going to be able to do some maintenance. We're still going to be able to do some things. But you notice that budget is about $8,000 less than the 22 budget. So it's not a huge amount. But with increased costs, more things go for stuff that people don't see.
Yep.
Airport. It's just a little bit of increase in a couple minor areas. The other utilities and the property taxes, otherwise it's the same as this year. Parks. The personnel has a larger than normal increase, and that's because we're covering something, but that is, and that comes up at budget time every once in a while, because if, and it doesn't necessarily mean this was one that was left in regarding retirements, but there's a certain cost when a person leaves employment.
It's kind of so that the hit's not so hard if somebody does retire.
Yeah. So there's a little bit, there's more in that for that. Just so that we wouldn't have to come back. I don't know what we would do if we had 7 retirements all early next year.
It would not be good.
Probably we would have to amend the
probably wouldn't be
budget.
here to see it.
You'd be one of the 7. She would see the other 6 and say, oh, guess what, I'm going to.
Yep.
But we'd have to amend the budget, but obviously we couldn't do anything regarding property taxes at that point. We just have to amend the budget to say we could spend that money. So we'd have to spend it out of reserves. Well, rather than spending it, we put it here, so. The other cost, there is some additional costs, obviously in the same areas as some of the other departments have as far as other utilities. And the gasoline and oil. We have a $2,500 increase for gasoline and oil.
Is that enough?
Yeah, I don't know. That one's probably enough, but, and then the transfer to the MRF, which has been reduced significantly. And the reason I say that reduced significantly is there's, a couple of those items that we're trying to do over time. We're looking at skipping a year, but we need to get back to it at some point. So. And there's more extensive descriptions, obviously, in the fund summary.
His equipment looks good.
And then it shows all the different pieces of equipment that Danny demands in order to get his job.
That'd be nice, or else he might retire right now.
Yeah, no, that's right. Next budget is the museum. There's some increase on personnel costs, a little bit, not a huge amount. The contractual, there's a little bit of increase in the insurance because they're requiring it. And the other utilities, and then a little bit on the professional services. The commodities is, again, a small increase, and that would probably be the area that would look next as far as an additional cut. So there's a little bit increase for expenses for exhibits. That's really not. Actually, there's no additional for that, sorry.
She did have an alarm system in here.
Right, and we
which
took that
did
out.
remove. That hers is becoming pretty hard to work on.
We didn't want to be bothered at night by the alarm system anyway, so. So the overall for the museum is not much different. So there's some difference there. The cemetery,
Hardly any change.
there's basically no change. The economic development is basically no change. That's the contract for our funding for Sherman County Community Development. And I don't guess I should confirm that discussion, whether there's any possibility that there would be a need for anything else and how do we accomplish that. So I haven't, just wanted to confirm that with Sherman County Community Development. But as far as our budget, originating budget, that's what we're starting with. And there's no changes to their building in this budget, which is one thing I would like to get accomplished. But this year we don't have anything in the budget to do that. As far as adding restrooms or creating a, move the vandalism of the restrooms to the Welcome Center rather than at Chambers Park and Rosewood Park.
You should make a call in to do that.
The next one is recreation. which is, we did reduce it. There was a couple reductions in the SURF, which was replacing certain things. And we're pushing out the resurfacing of the tennis court, and there was a couple other items. So that was an area where we made cuts. And then Stever Water Park was an area as well. Where we removed the transfers to the Surf and Murph in the Stever Water Park for the pool. Pool improvements. Whether that's going for major repairs or to replace certain things or to eventually whatever is going to happen with the pool. So we kept the amount to keep the equipment going. It's just major ticket items. But there's a risk with that as well. So that's some of the choices that we made in order to create this. And that's the end of the general fund. So we don't have the page with the department, that single page, Mary, with the departments listed as far as expenditures, like a summary sheet thing.
That one that you looked at earlier?
Yeah.
You can get it.
We will present more on the other funds at the next meeting, including the other tax funds, property tax funds, as far as debt service and employee benefit and forgetting the other one, library and library employee benefits. That's probably.
Because I can't read it.
No, that's all right. That's what we just talked about. That's what's included in here. And then we also provided you, now that we've gone through this, it'll probably be easier for you. As far as, I thought I had it in my. The list of cuts.
Is that what this is at the beginning?
Yeah, we got it in the front.
Yeah. Yeah, that thing.
This in here. Yeah.
That we did in order to get to this point. And we basically had 500, between the three different sets, $586,000 worth of stuff that we took out of this budget. Either by raising revenues, which was adding a little bit of additional transfers, or trying to meet the sales tax, what we've done, what is the expected outcome this year from what the budget is, or cuts that we made to the expenditures. So that's where we're at this point. Now you can go back to the other one. Josh. We'll go ahead to the next slide, Josh. So the main question, and that's kind of what we started out with, do we try to meet the revenue neutral rate? It require, and you can see that on here, on your page 1, after your index at the very beginning of this book. Well, after, you guys haven't looked at that thing, I think it's me, but in that right-hand column, it says 114,804, kind of in the middle. So it's about 115,000 in revenue in order to get down to the rate, the revenue neutral rate. And whether or not we try to reach that R&R of 45 mils, 8.811, do we send the request to have a hearing notice? Same question you guys dealt with last year. And then with the three-legged stool of property sales and user fees, where and how does the city pay for increased costs? You know, we'll have to make additional cuts, and we can do that. We're still able to do that. We'll still be a functioning city. But is it a good long-term strategy? And I know people are hurting right now with what their expected bills are at. So it's obviously a balance. What do we need to do in order to keep functioning and keep doing the job people expect us to do? So, any additional questions, concerns, comments? Did this help as far as an explanation of what was provided you?
Yeah, it was good, and I think the summary is better this year than I've seen in the past, as far as kind of a breakdown of exactly what everything is. So it's kind of been in there, but I just feel like this year maybe things were filled out a little better, clarified a little more for us to get a better idea of exactly where everything's going. So that's appreciated for sure. Like I said, it's going to be a tough year getting this figured out for sure. Do you have any questions regarding this portion of the budget? At this point, anyway.
I just have one thing on the revenue neutral rate. You know, last year we cut it, 49,000 out of the budget. This year they want 115,000 out of the budget. Next year could be $200,000 out of the budget or more. And it's just going to keep getting higher and higher and higher. And with the people of the city wanting the same services all the time, where do you stop? And I know cutting taxes is great, would be great to cut some taxes, but with the increases on everything else, you either cut services or you try to keep them the same, which means not going with the revenue neutral rate.
Anybody have anything else they'd like to add?
One other thing, just to, I wrote down, just scribbled some danger effects, and I think I've mentioned 2 or 3 of them as have gone along anyway, as far as the delay for projects or equipment, the retirements, the 1-year effects regarding the R&R. But one other thing I wanted to say was we had gone through a strategic planning process at the beginning, and the progress on the board goals that this board talked about. You know, we've made progress regarding the builders board and the planning commission. The county is a better working relationship. That's one of the goals that you guys have set out. And as part of that, there was a community barbecue. That was part of that deal. You wanted to address, and you made some progress regarding that staffing, or be doing things to be able to keep staff. But there is nothing in this budget regarding housing, other than demolition of housing. There's nothing dedicated, other than our one that's already exists, the neighborhood revitalization plan, which, as you can see, costs us, that's right underneath the ad valorem tax and the revenues, it costs us money. So it does provide a benefit because it's a reimbursement of property taxes paid. And it's probably overestimated in the budget, but that's so we don't get caught with an adjustment on the final valuation, and that line item's out of sorts as well. So it's not that much that would be affected. But then we do have some things in here regarding inflation effects, but do we have enough? I think I said that about 5 times. And it's not just gas, it's, you know, the additional 1-inch PVC that Kenton wants to buy instead of Dustin. So.
Yeah, I mean, just the cost of materials and the cost to get your materials here. You know, everything's going up right now, so.
And then the economic development of downtown, there's really, except for our dedication to Sherman County Community Development, there's nothing else that's dedicated to economic development. Whether that be adding things to make different parcels a little more ready for something to happen, some development to occur. But just wanted to remind you of that, of the items that we talked about earlier here. That was the one additional thing. So.
I think you guys did a pretty incredible job at trimming where you could. I cut quite a bit out of there, you know, even if we didn't meet the R&R and we had to, you know, meet that 115,000, that might be just in fuel right there. So I know that's a tough job trying to come up with things to cut and figure out where you can wait another year. So to trim the fat that you did already, that was a good job.
And I do want to say that I'm not
Necessarily happy with the cuts, but they had to be made. I mean, someone, I don't think Kent or I, either one are happy, but you gotta do it.
Yeah.
Well, and it's, you know, part of the, where we started from was request. It's, you know, that wasn't going to be the final number no matter what anyway. But we went through 3 different times. Let's start again. We got a set of cuts done and then, okay, where are we at? How much more do we need to go? And then did it again and did it again. So, and not saying that it's, any of those decisions can be, if you guys think something's important enough, don't hesitate to say, we need that in. We need to put that in, and we need to find somewhere else. We'll figure out how to do that. But we will need your direction at next meeting. What are we going to do about the R&R rate? And are you good with what was presented tonight? And then we'll present the additional utility funds and the other budgeted funds and the SURF and MRF and all the other IRFs. IRF. Is there any piece of information that you guys wish would have been part of this presentation that's not here?
Seems to me to be
So I
pretty
see.
thorough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
it's
things
laid
were
out really
covered pretty
well.
well, so.
Self-explanatory.
Anybody have anything else? Anybody out there have any comments they wish to add regarding the general section of the budget? Okay, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion by Commissioner Redland. I have a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Myers. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, thank you, guys.